Have you been to DC before?
I've been to DC only once before.
Okay.
And it was 23 years ago.
Okay.
Wow.
And I slept in the car last time.
Oh my God.
Really?
So I would have been quite happy with this room.
This
a long time
would be
ago.
a good room to sleep in. No one's going to bother you.
Yeah.
It's kind of chilly, but and creepy.
Yeah, and I would love to have time to see everything. It's changed so much.
Right,
Really,
yeah.
just the drive from the train station to here, I was like, is this the same city? It was different.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a really pretty city.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on the movie.
Oh, thank you.
We just saw it. We saw it together
Friday.
on Friday. I love the fact that your character is this, powerful, defense lawyer. And hypothetically, if you could pick one of your previous characters to cover this case, which one would do the best job covering it, and which one would do the worst?
Okay, I'd say Hector from Troy would have done the worst job because he would have just taken his sword to the British legal system. I'm trying to think who would have had the smarts to solve this. I'll have to come back to that. Let me think about that for a second.
Got it. What about King Henry?
King Henry, yes.
Yeah, that's a good one, Lauren.
Yes. So what did I think of
I
that?
have to admit, I just watched my Blu-ray of The Other Golden Girl earlier this morning, so that's why that is on my mind right now. You're so good at that movie.
That was a lot of fun.
I was wondering if the conspiracy aspect of the film made you think of news stories in a different way. Like now when you're watching the news, are you like, I don't know if I believe all of, what the news organizations are saying? Or
Yeah, it's kind of scary. I saw the film last week for the first time, very simply just with my wife, and it kind of presented one way, and then I saw it. It's always good to see it with an audience. We had a screening in New York last night, and I sat with the audience, and I needed to see it a second time, just technically. And it was scarier the second time. I was like, actually, is it that far-fetched, really?
I know.
Like it just
doesn't
kind of
feel
felt...
like that.
The first time it felt more far-fetched, and then the second time I saw it, I just sort of felt like, yeah, maybe it's not a million miles away from some things that occur. But films do that to you as well. I mean, I think every time you do a film, you get really close to a subject matter or to a character, and then next time you see the news and it's in any way related, it's always different.
You see it in a
it's
different
like
way.
Black Hawk Down forever changed.
Right.
The way when I'm in a hotel, I'm brushing my teeth, and it's like 6 soldiers were killed. It's a completely different experience to what it was for me 10 or 20 years ago.
Totally.
So I think every time you do a film and you get exposed to another side of life that was foreign to you, it changes your perception.
Does and kind of piggyback on that, does it make you more leery of your government? I know you're from Australia, but
We are born leery. That should be on our crest. Sarcastic, suspicious. I mean, we are... sorry, I interrupted.
No, go with it. That's fine, because I know from our point of view as Americans, we think, of course, the world revolves around us, and that's, pretty bad to think that way. And what was fascinating about this particular movie was that it gives us the angle from England, and I think that will open up a lot of people's eyes. Well, it's not just here.
It's not just here, right.
And then timing-wise, David Miranda was just grabbed because
In
of his
London.
association with a reporter. And you think, all right, this is government run amok.
Yeah.
And
it was the length of time that he was held that's raising all the suspicions too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So when you're getting deep into your character, do you do a lot of work and reading current events and whatever political system, in this case, it's supposed to be pointing a finger at? Yeah,
I mean, it was important for us to fully understand the machinations of that closed court proceeding and the role of the special advocate and all that. It was important for Rebecca, myself and John, obviously, to have a handle on that, but more from the standpoint that the better we understood it, the more simply we could present it. I think when the people making the film have a good handle on the material, they're more confident in not over-explaining, and I think had John have over-explained the mechanics of that, it would have been a lot more complicated. So I think he did a good job of just kind of keeping it moving. Basically, the court's open to the public, the court's closed to the public. We all get that concept. Let's move on.
Right.
So, yes, I mean, I think you come across stories and you come across things in your research that you think, oh, that could be relevant to this. Could be the cause for a closed session, or this would be a very frustrating case if it were to go down the road of being applicable to a closed court hearing. So yeah, there's no doubt that you do see things a little differently.
Okay.
Can you talk about your accent change? Because you've played a couple of characters where you've had to leave the Australian accent behind.
I don't ever get to be Australian.
I know!
And the last time I did a movie at home, I was a Hungarian immigrant, so
you didn't get to do it.
I never get cut a break. Funny people, I was allowed to be Australian.
Oh, that's right.
yeah.
That's right.
And I got criticised for my Australian accent.
Are you serious?
No, I read a few people were like, I don't buy his Australian accent.
That's kind of a compliment, though.
My accent. Shut up.
I think a lot of people think you are like British and not Australian, and especially
Really?
based
Oh,
off that. And because the accent is so good, and like people like us, like they don't actually do the research behind the movies. Like they just look at the actor on the screen.
Right.
So can you talk about do you work with a voice coach for all of your different accent changes?
Yeah, it depends on where I'm working and what I'm doing, but I always put some work into that. And it's not just about, for me, I just better get that accent right so I don't get criticised in that territory. It's a real key. It's a real key. And in this case, how Martin sounds. I mean, Martin's background, everyone's background informs the way they speak, whether you like it or not. So when you're doing accent work is actually really, really interesting. I've learnt a lot from it, not just about accents, but about people, about cultures, about tradition. I mean, it's a key way to a lot of things. And in this case, it was quite particular, and I wanted to be very careful to not take it too far, because there is an implied intellect that comes with someone who's as good as Martin and is at that stage of his career. You can't have him all sort of street, he's not going to start there. And, Your Honour, I mean, really, the court should be closed, right?
Right.
I mean, so you have to have a hand. You have to know why he's not going to sound like that.
Right.
So yes, in this case, I worked with someone from England who I'd worked with before, and it's always fun.
Cool.
Again, piggybacking on that a little bit, I saw that you had a background in sketch comedy and you do some pretty good impersonations, and I was wondering what your favorite impersonation was to do. I saw that you did Arnold Schwarzenegger and Tom Cruise. I really like the Tom Cruise one.
That's 20 years old.
Do you have any favorite impersonations that you do?
Yes, I do. My favourite impersonations to do are always on a film set of other crew members, for the purpose of other crew members, and I hope that they never find out. So actually, the first audition meeting I ever went to was to be part of this sketch comedy show that I was in Australia. And the producer, who was a very nice man, who I'm still very thankful to, said to me, so, you do voices and accents and stuff, so do you do any famous people? And I said, nah, but I'm really good at doing the guy from the milk bar around the corner. And he was like, Right, okay, I'm not sure how we're going to be able to use that one, but I did end up doing it. I ended up, at the beginning of my career, I had a couple of characters that became really popular at home because they were so ridiculous. And they were based on unfamous people, so they're always the most fun to do.
Right.
Famous people are always quite lame to do. I always feel like a bit of a sellout doing those sort of impressions.
But it's funny.
Yeah, it's funny.
I would say in Australia, this is where I go off the rails a little bit. If I read correctly, you and I both share fondness for an Australian-made movie that became iconic in this country. And what I want to ask you is, and I hope that I read correctly, if you could be any character from Mad Max or the Road Warrior, which one would you want to be and why?
Well, Max was a little bit on the boring side. Well, I mean, he's my favourite two films, the first two. I don't know. I always liked Jim Goose.
Right.
the motorcycle cop.
Oh yeah.
He was a great character. So maybe Jim Goose.
Jim Goose.
Yeah.
Okay. And just to parlay that into the next segment, they're rebooting that whole.
Oh, they finished it ages ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
They did the first one. You're going to have your agent lobby to get you in the second or third?
No, that would be like. I won't tell you what that would be like. That would just be weird. No.
To be in the new Mad Max?
Yeah, that would just be weird.
It would be weird, really?
It's a classic. You don't want to mess with it. Yeah.
It's like.
So you just let the outside.
If someone said, "Will you play the line from The Wizard of Oz?"
Exactly.
You have to just say, "No."
Yeah.
I'm not going to
I'm not
ruin the
touching
line.
that, yeah.
Best analogy ever.
Mad Max line from Wizard of Oz. I do get it, yeah. Charlize Theron didn't think it was weird to go in there.
Well, she wasn't. She didn't have to follow in someone's footsteps. She got to do her own thing.
Right.
Right. Well, I think it's a reimagining. They're going in and doing different things.
I don't know. I think Tom Hardy's playing Max. I don't know that Tom Hardy's playing a fictitious
Well,
character.
maybe Lord Humongous had a brother.
Maybe he did. Don't ask me to do my Lord Humongous impression.
Okay, let's hear it.
You're obviously very physically fit, and you have been for so many movies. Can you talk about your training that you did for like the rowing scenes in this movie?
It was almost very lame because for the first time in my life I had a lame injury. I actually tore a tendon in my arm and I had no idea how I did it. And when I signed on for the film, I suddenly realised I've got to row and I can't pick up a mug of coffee. Like I couldn't do that in February of last year. And I just told him straight up, I said, look, I've got an injury. It's going to come good, but I don't know how long it's going to take. But just schedule the rowing scenes for the end. I'll train, I'll do everything I can, I'll learn I'll do everything. So I got there in the end, but I had blood injections and all kinds of stuff to get it right.
Wow.
But it was great. It was great fun. So I started training at home in Melbourne, and then got to train when I got to London, and then got to do it for real. Definitely underestimated how hard it is. I didn't do rowing as a kid at school. Single scull in a race boat, very difficult.
Oh, yeah.
But very addictive.
Yeah.
Really? So all of those scenes were filmed at the end of production, near the end of the filming of this movie?
Yeah.
Wow. How do you, as an actor, like when you're filming out of like you're filming in non-linear order, how do you get, I guess, like, what if you film the end scenes first? I mean, I know a lot of actors do this, but like, how do you get there mentally where that character is?
It's a really good question because it's one of the most difficult things about the job, and it's the balance between turning up to work and being completely open to what's going to happen that day in that scene, but making sure that it's within the confines of where you've just come from and where you're about to go to. And I always really lean on the director in that instance. So I would rather be a little bit free in the scene, even if it's the first few takes, and then I'll quite often say, John, is that going to work? Like, remind me exactly where we're going to... Because the scene that you're coming out of, you may not even have shot yet.
Right.
The director will have a very clear view, or should have a very clear view of the tone of that moment. And John was great, and we had a lot of time, thank God, to map all this out. That's really important in a film like this, because the gradual ramp up of suspense and paranoia and tension, if it's not calibrated right, it just jumps out and just looks ridiculous. So we had enough time to map that out pretty well.
Especially with the screenplay.
Right, yeah.
That would be really difficult.
Yeah.
You've played characters on both sides of the law. You played Chopper, and then you played this character, Martin. Which character do you prefer? Like, which good or bad or?
I don't know if it's interesting. In some ways, for want of a better term, bad guys can be more liberating, but then in some ways less challenging. I don't know. I mean, every role is completely different, and I mean, I've been, very lucky that I've been indulged in being able to bounce around.
Right.
I'm very thankful for that. But it is a different experience for sure.
Do you think that your character Martin would have wanted to defend Chopper at all?
Absolutely. Tim Owen, the fellow who came up with the idea for the screenplay, is a human rights lawyer back in the UK. He's a very well known barrister, and he defends all kinds. I mean, he's had some of the most high profile cases over there. Really interesting fellow. So I'm sure that Chopper would have got well represented.
Did you get to go see any of his court cases at all?
Not of his court cases, but yes, Rebecca and I sat in on a few cases, which was really interesting. Sat in on a couple of murder trials, a flashing case in Hyde Park, where his defence barrister tried to argue that he was just merely dancing along to some music whilst having his headphones on. That was interesting.
And his clothes just happened to come off.
Yeah.
Well, that does happen quite a bit in Hyde Park, doesn't it? I would think that would be the place that I'm going to go and bop around naked with headphones on. And I can't do it here. I'll go to Hyde Park.
Yeah.
That's my vacation. Now, all roles are, they have their challenges. How would you rate the challenges posed by this role as, say, compared to Eric Heller in Hannah?
Mm-hmm. Well, the challenge here was playing a character who never gets control, and there's no physical release. There's no moment there, I mean, besides lamely hitting someone over the head with a crowbar and then running away, like the true hero I was. There's no moment there, for there to be any physicality for the character to take charge. I mean, he kind of lamely takes charge in the hotel room, only once he realises that the only way the boy will be safe is by getting him to court. He's willing to cut a deal because he doesn't want himself and Claudia to get hurt. So that was interesting because I like the ending. I like the fact that we find a damaged person at the end. It would never have felt right to me for Martin to be striding into the courtroom the next day on the next trial.
Right.
Because I think that's important, and I think that's part of what grounds the film. We've all had experiences where something happens in our professional life and it takes a toll. Like something happens, you're exposed to something either in your personal life or your professional life, and you go, I just got to take a breath for a second. So I like the fact that Martin experienced that, and that we play that beat, and that we find the characters. 3 months have gone by. He hasn't been to court. He's not answering his phone.
Right.
There's a cost. There's a cost there.
Right.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that you got hurt rowing.
No, I didn't get hurt rowing. I was hurt beforehand, so I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to do.
Is that the first time you got hurt filming? I don't think so. Cause
I didn't hurt it filming. I actually not sure how it was. It was wear and tear from dirt biking and playing tennis and doing stupid stuff. So it finally let go, but it's good now. So.
Okay.
I thought that you and Rebecca had really excellent chemistry in the film, despite that your characters weren't really supposed to be talking to each other, and you do have limited, screen time together. Did you talk about it with her before filming on how that relationship was going to play out, or did you just kind of take it scene by scene? Because I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, it was a deliberate ploy to never have the characters together properly, and I was always joking about it because I said, guys, you're not going to get away with this with the American audience. We're going to be back in September, and we're going to be on the bed in the boathouse and going for it.
I was kind of waiting for it.
They're always saying, no. They're going to do a test screen. They go, we want to see them crack on. We want to see them together.
Right.
I'm telling you, we're going to be back here in September. There's going to be a bit of hokey pokey in the boathouse. And they were very confident that wasn't going to happen. But that was another point of uniqueness which I liked. I thought in some ways it made it more romantic, and it was the antithesis of how loving relationships are presented on screen. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was.
I thought it was like that scene after she gets hurt, and you guys are in I think your apartment. I was like, something's gonna happen. And it never does. Yeah. But I think that proves the realisticness of the screenplay.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And as I was saying before, it's important that the characters stayed the characters.
Definitely.
Didn't suddenly. There wasn't a point at which the film sort of turns on its heels, and you're having to readjust and recalibrate, and suddenly we've got special skills, or you have a traditional love scene right in the middle. I mean, we have a flashback.
Right.
The audience
Right.
gets a little bit of a flashback.
Right.
Yeah.
But in real time, we don't get there. So.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Oh,
much.
but they were fun. It's so much easier when there's more of them.
And it's not like an awkward, like, long
Time flies.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much. It was
you.
great meeting you.